Well, I would like to start by thanking York University and YESI, York Environmental Sustainability Institute, for giving me the chance of accomplish this research. And I would like to thank especially to Sue Hartley and, well, and also the rest of the people working in YESI, Sheila Davids and Helen Picard and the rest of academics and PhD students for their warm support, always helpful comments. And I would like also to apologize in advance for my poor English and bad accent. I will try to do the best to be understood. And, well, so let's get started. The title of this work is Environmental Problems and the Rise of Environmental Concern. Well, the rise of environmental concern that has been taking place since the 60s or 70s has been attempted to be explained by several theories, and I'm going to present you probably the three most important theories about that. The first one is the post-materialist hypothesis that states that the rise of environmental concern is the consequence of a change of values in society, changing from materialistic kind of values, such as looking for shelter or security order, jobs, economy-related needs, changing from these kind of values to towards a new set of values labeled as post-materialist values, like freedom of speech, liberty of thought, self-expression, self-realization, and also the look for environmental quality in life. So this kind of change of values in society, they say, it has been happened thanks to an economic growth in societies. Once that in a given country they can provide, they can fulfill the most basic needs that are the materialistic needs. Once they can fulfill the most basic needs for the large amount of people in the given country, providing them shelter, jobs, security order, once they have achieved that point, they can move forward another kind of needs that are the post-materialistic needs, and then those needs are related, of course, with post-materialist values. That's how the theory runs. We have another theory. This is the so-called affluence hypothesis. More or less, what they're saying here is that the richer you are, on the whole, the richer you are, the more environmentally concerned you are. As a country, it works like once you are rich enough, you have achieved a certain level of richness, then you can, as a country, devote your surplus, your extra money to other kind of budgets, not just fueling the economy. You can devote some money to social expenditure and also to environmental quality policies. And to the individual level, here, you don't need to be rich to buy eco-labeled products, but it's true that you should be richer, in a sense, in order to afford these kind of products that most of the time are more expensive than normal products. So this is how they explain more or less this theory. Last, we have the degradation hypothesis, and this hypothesis is the one we are going to pay more attention, more closely, we are going to privilege most. This hypothesis states that the rise of environmental concern runs parallel to a rise of environmental problems all around the world. So this is a global issue. Those are the three theories. Well, which is the question, or which are the questions of this research? First one, obviously, which is the right explanation out of the three we have seen before? Closest to the, let's say, truth out there, which means, does pollution cause social awareness of environmental problems? This is one of the questions we should answer. And anyway, this is just half of the story, because if pollution actually has an effect on the environmental concern, well, pollution is a broad concept. Which kind of pollution, which kind of environmental problem really triggers better environmental concern? And we are going to look at it as well. And of course, are there other social factors involved in the development of environmental concern? Well, so far, it's interesting, very much, I can see. But is that important as well, so to speak? What's new in this research? Well, so we have used multi-level regression techniques, multi-level regression models. Of course, I'm not the only one doing this. But it's true that most of the time, the sociologists or researchers dealing with environmental concern, they don't use these kind of techniques, which actually are the better to coping with the issue of country level and individual level factors at the same time, as we see later. Well, so this is the good technique to use, okay, but it's not new, it's good, just good. Well, we focus on the degradation hypothesis, and this is peculiar, strange, because most of the time we sociologists, when we try to explain environmental concern, but also in different fields we try to explain, sociology always, or most of the time, try to explain social facts as a consequence of other social facts that are explained by other social facts. And yeah, we hardly look to, let's say, reality out there. This world, objective world out there, we don't pay so much attention to that. And this is why this hypothesis has been neglected most of the time. We focus on it. This is peculiar, still not new. What is new is this. Emotion. Well, the new thing here is that we use an unprecedented amount of objective indicators of environmental degradation. Former studies, when they have to test the degradation hypothesis, they use 1, 2, 3 indicators, no more, for environmental quality, dealing with environmental problems or pollution. Most of the time they use CO2 per capita, and this is most of the time is a mistake, because CO2 per capita is strongly correlated to GDP per capita. Other times they use air quality indicators, and you can find, this is strange, but you can find also water quality indicators in these kind of studies. They never explain you why they have chosen those particular indicators. They choose 1, 2, or 3, but they don't explain you why they think those are the best. So here I have collected 32 indicators for environmental quality, 32 indicators ranging from an ample, wide variety of aspects of nature. And then we'll be able to say this and this and these indicators really explain environmental concern regarding the degradation hypothesis. So that's new. Well, we have been talking all the time long about environmental concern, but which is the definition of that? Here we provide a definition, and the one who is written it is Dunlap, that is the founding father of environmental sociology. So yeah, we should have to trust that this is a good one. And well, we should, and we do, at least I do. Well, environmental concern is the degree to which people are aware of problems regarding the environment and support efforts to solve them, and or willingness to contribute personally to their solution. Well, to cope with this definition, we have a question, this one. Now I will briefly describe some people. Will you please indicate for each description, because there are several descriptions there, whether that person is very much like you, etc. So there are several descriptions. One of them is this one. Looking after the environment is important to this person to care for nature and save life resources. So as we see, this definition matches. This question matches the definition, and we're going to use it as a dependent variable in our study. I dichotomize. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I do this with the dependent variable in order to simplify the models. Okay, we have two kinds of data. We have subjective kind of data and objective kind of data. The subjective kind of data try to explain, deal with individual traits, individual beliefs and attitudes, and the objective kind of data are related to environmental quality indicators or economic indicators. So the subjective data comes from the World Values Survey, 6th wave, 2010, and for social science, 2010 is not present, is almost future. So it's good data for us. And we deal with 50 countries here. We don't have UK, sorry. We have Spain, good. And this survey comprehends 73,042 individuals, always willing to answer the questions. And this is a big deal. I mean, there are many people in there, but most of the time, numbers are not enough. Yeah, we have 50 countries, but previous studies dealing with environmental concern, they have many countries as well. Not 50, but many. The problem is that most of the times there, they use kind of similar countries, or like Western industrialized countries. So in order to test, to really test the theories we're going to test, we should have a wider variety of countries, different countries. So let's see where are they coming from. Yeah. So the green countries are the countries we have. So yeah, it's like most of the world. We have many countries in Asia and many countries in Africa. This is kind of a difficult issue dealing with social service. Countries in Africa we have there. We have the States, we have many countries in South America, we have even Singapore, we have Australia, and we have, as you have noticed, Spain again. Okay, dealing with objective data. We have taken data from the World Bank, and those data and all the data I'm going to show you are for free. This is an advantage for social science. Well, anyway, so we have GDP per capita, and taken from the World Bank for free, and also we calculate the rate of economic growth. Because, yeah, we think, it's reasonable to think, makes sense, that the environmental concern of people could be related to, yeah, how rich a country is, that is GDP per capita, but also maybe a not so rich country, but a country that it's undergoing process of economic growth. Maybe people there will think, yeah, could we devote parts of our surplus to other kind of policies, like environmental quality policies? Well, makes sense. We're going to check that. We use also the ecological footprint per capita, taken from the Global Footprint Network, and we use a couple of indexes dealing with environmental quality, environmental performance index, and the environmental sustainability index. And then we use also several indicators that made up those indexes. We never use at the same time in the same model an index and a sub-index. Of course, we don't use, so to speak, the whole and part of the whole at the same time. It wouldn't make any sense. We won't do that. Well, let's see to those 25 indicators. Here they are. I won't explain them all. But as we see, we have density. For instance, we have nitrogen oxidized per populated land area, and this variable is related with acid rain. Those two, growing stock change and forest cover change, they are related to deforestation. So we have pretty covered. We have three variables dealing with water. So as I said, we have covered most of the factors dealing with nature. Yeah. We have used also another index, that is the World Risk Index, coming from the World Risk Report. And this index and subindexes dealing with another kind of nature of data. We could think, of course, that environmental concern is the consequence of environmental problems, of pollution, let's say. But also, maybe a person living in a country with a very high standard of environmental quality could felt to be threatened by nature in a way, like the risk for earthquakes, yeah, and floods and stuff. So we could think that this kind of effects, this kind of natural threats, could affect as well to environmental concern. Let's check it. This index is made up by 4 subindexes. This is the first one, exposure to a natural hazard. But of course, just natural hazard is half of the story as well, because you need also to take into account resources of a country dealing with, social responses for natural hazards. You should deal with that too. They have taken that into account, and they have made these other 3 subindexes, and out of these 3 indexes, they make another subindex that is called vulnerability, and we are going to use them all, on the whole 32. So, which variables are we going to use? In order to test the effluence hypothesis, we use GDP per capita, as we said, GDP growth in the last 5 years, and income. The World Values Survey doesn't ask for, how much money a person earns. Instead of that, they ask how much money do you earn in comparison with your country fellows, something like that. And that's why I call it subjective income. This is not the best variable possible, but is the best one I have, so I use it. In order to test the post-materialist hypothesis, we use the post-materialist scale that has been developed by Ronald Inglehart, that is the author of the post-materialist thesis. So we truly trust in this construct. And this scale deals with values in individuals, trying to identify if a person is post-materialistic, materialistic, or mixed in the middle. We use also a national average of post-materialists in a country. The word here is a German word. I expect not to be, I'm going to try to pronounce it. Zeitgeist. Not many Germans here. Okay, so Zeitgeist is like the spirit of the time. So it makes sense to think that a person in a given country where most of the people or many people are post-materialists, maybe this person, she feels encouraged to develop his environmental concern because of sharing the same worldview as the rest of her fellows in the country. Could make sense. We can check it. And also the degradation hypothesis with 32 indicators, as we have said. We also take into account several socio-demographic factors like sex, age, and this variable of here, cognitive mobilization, that is made up by the level of education and the political concern. I could have used just level of education. It works the same in every model. The coefficients don't change. So this is, I have chosen this one, but you could think of it as level of education. Methods. As I said before, we used multi-level regression models. This is the official name of it. I won't pronounce it, but you can read it. And this technique is very useful. Actually, it's not useful. It's something like that you should do whenever you try to cope with differences between countries and differences between individuals. When you have factors at those two levels, you should take into account techniques like this one. This technique what it deals with, let's say, controlling differences of countries, controlling differences between countries, and then explain those differences. We are going to use the environmental quality factors in order to explain those differences. But it works actually as a regression. This is a classical regression model. We have a dependent variable explained by several independent variables, and at last we have E, that is the error, individual error. The change here is that most of it is quite the same, but we have here an U that is dealing with error linked to countries. We separate individual and country error. Well, now fun begins. More fun? Yeah, more. Because now we are going to show some results, okay? We have run 6 models, and the first model always, when you use multi-level regression, the first model is called model 0 or null model. And you do it, we have been always talking about differences between countries, but what if there are no differences between countries? So let's check it. This model checks if there are differences between countries, and it's not a surprise. Yeah, there are differences between countries regarding environmental concern, otherwise probably I wouldn't be here. And we could skip this and be drinking wine. But model 0 tells us that we can get, this is the equation for the model. Just model 0 is a model without any independent variable. And here we see in the intercept if there are differences between countries. That's it. But this is half of a story again. Yeah, there are differences, but those differences are big enough in order to make worthy this kind of research? Not a big surprise. The answer is yes. In order to cope with that, you have to calculate what is called the intra-class correlation coefficient. And the thumb rule here is that you should have a 5% at least. We have 13%, so we can carry on. This 13%, yeah, this 30% means that if we have 2 persons, one from China, another one from Spain, because we have China and Spain. If we have 2 persons, one from China, another one from Spain, the differences regarding environmental concern, the 13% of differences among them are due to differences between countries. That's what it means. So model 1 is just individual variables. Well, I'm going to, if you are acquainted with a regression, you can read it, but I'm going to provide you some clues in the case you are not so used to deal with regressions. So here, the things that you have to pay attention to are not really the coefficients, which are very difficult to interpret. Those are logit units. That's too abstract. But the sign, positive or negative, and the stars. I know that there's an English word for that, asterisk, something like that. I will say the stars, because asterisks is difficult and stars is very fashion. So, 3 stars means that we are 99% sure that this factor is related to the dependent variable, in this case, environmental concern. 2 stars mean that we are 95% sure that this factor is related to the dependent variable, and just 1 star is that the level of confidence is 90%. 90. This is social science, my friends. Well, so let's see what is going on in here. We see that females are more environmentally concerned than men. We see that well, two things. First, there are some variables squared. We do it in order to see if there are non-linear relations with the dependent variable. And also, as you have said, that really the right interpretation is not here, is not saying females are more than men regarding environmental concern, and many other things as well, probably. But okay, it's not just that, but the other variables also work as a control. So here, the right interpretation is say females are more environmental concerned than men, regardless age, income, and values and level of education. So yeah, the older yeah, here the older it's positive. The older you are, the more environmentally concerned you are. This is negative, meaning that the richer you are, the less interested in the less likelihood, the less likely you are of being environmentally concerned. And of course, post-materialist values are behaving in the expected way, as well as cognitive mobilization. Well, model 2 is quite the same, but here this is called a slope random model. Here we take one variable. In this case, we choose post-materialistic values. We make it random in order to, let's say, control differences of this variable regarding countries. But the coefficients remain quite the same. But here, it's important to see the deviance. The deviance of the previous model is bigger. So whenever you have smaller deviance, means that this model fits better. There is a test you run here that is called the LR test, and it casts statistically significant differences between them, saying that this model is better. So it's better to control, to have this slope random model we are going to use throughout the rest of the models. Here we use more variables dealing with affluence and post-materialistic hypothesis. The individual variables still perform in the same way. And here we see that economic growth is positively related to environmental concern. When we check deviance, we see that this number is smaller. The LR test is significant, meaning that this model explains better reality than the previous two models. Next model is the most important one, because it's the one dealing with contamination. In order to test the degradation hypothesis, we develop the fourth model. We have ruled out every other variable dealing with affluence and values. Just we focus on the degradation hypothesis. We won't see there the 32 indicators for environmental quality, because it will be huge and crazy, not because the table will be too big. It means that this model, for instance, took like probably a week to be calculated, week non-stop. The computer always switched on, calculating this. A model, like I'm saying, 32 variables at the same time could be like 6 months. So imagine after 6 months saying, oh, I forgot this variable. Oh, that's a big mistake. Yeah. Actually, in SPSS, it's impossible to run a model with more than 10 variables in multi-level techniques. I brought them. Why is it impossible? They told me, you don't need more. And I say, oh, that's a relief. So I used this data. Anyway, so fourth model, we're going to see just the most important variables dealing with environmental quality regarding environmental concern. which are going to be the ones, and well, the individual variables behave in the same way, and these are the chosen variables. The chosen factors are water scarcity and national biodiversity. Out of the 32 indicators we have, those are the best. Explain. So the explanation here is like probably a person in a country where water is scarce. Probably she thinks that more pressure on his environment could mean the collapse of the water system. The collapse of water system will lead, of course, to the collapse of economic and social systems. Well, that's probably why it's related to environmental concern. We see also that national biodiversity is related to environmental concern, meaning that countries with rich nature, probably they feel that they have, this nature is like a national treasure or something, and they had to protect, and that's why they have more likelihood of developing environmental concern. And again, that's important. Well, this is a common mistake. Now you don't use deviance. Probably you don't care so much about that, but you don't use deviance here, because deviance is only for nested models, and this is not a nested model. Now you take a look on those indicators and comparing it with the indicators of model 3, meaning that this model fits, because they are smaller, fits better realities. So the degradation hypothesis, traditionally neglected, actually explains reality better than the affluence and post-materialist hypothesis altogether. So, yeah, and now, good news. And now, the final, that's why it's good news. The final model, that is the fifth model, also called full model. It's called full model because we are going to use there all the variables that have been used before altogether. And now, in a sense, those factors are going to fight for survival, and we're going to see the fittest, let's say, the fittest, survival fittest of those factors. So the question is, will water scarcity and national biodiversity survive in the final model? Well, the individual factors are still there in the same way. Change is that we have here that GDP per capita is now is significant, and the GDP per capita squared is significant as well. Positive, negative, meaning that GDP per capita is related with environmental concern in a mountain shape. So the poorest and the richest, more or less, they share the same likelihood of being, people living there, share the same likelihood of being environmental concern. But little by little, when a country is getting richer, people there is getting more environmentally concerned till a certain point. Then, little by little, they lose interest on it, more or less. But actually, yeah, water scarcity still standing there. National biodiversity is ruled out, non-significant, but water scarcity is there, still 99% level of confidence. And we see also the Ike smaller, so this model, of course, fits better reality than the rest of them. That's pretty all of it. And conclusions. So, our data support the degradation hypothesis. Good point. Publics in richer countries are less likely to express environmental concern, meaning that we reject the affluence hypothesis. The post-materialist hypothesis works as expected, and population of countries experiencing water scarcity have higher levels of environmental concern. And this is important. Remember, we have indicators dealing with water quality. So it's not a question of if water is clean or dirty. The question is if drinkable water is there or not. So when there is no much amount of water, drinkable water in the country, people get more involved with the environmental concern. And this is all. Thanks for your attention.
I shouldn't have made any comments about the theme leaders, the research leaders' photos, should I? Given the photos of the YESI team, but anyway. Yeah, so I think Helen's looking particularly fetching in those leaves. Obviously very environmentally concerned. Right, well, we've got some time for questions before drinks, so, there's one straight away from Callum.
Oh. In your looking at the affluence hypothesis, you concluded that biodiversity was an influence on environmental concern in one of the models.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder what effect, what the confounding factors might be here. And if we look at biodiversity-rich countries, they're often in the tropics and less well-off, generally speaking, than some of the richer countries. And yet your affluence, your income measure was a relative one, which is this.
The individual income measure, but we use GDP.
The GDP then
per capita.
Takes that out. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that case, what you're saying is that those two factors are separated out. Your correlation still stands. It's not a spurious one.
No, not at all. Yeah, I didn't bring here the matrix of correlations, but there have been many variables ruled out by high correlation. Actually, CO2 per capita and most of the air quality indicators I had to rule out because of strong correlation. And I had also some indicators dealing with policies and vulnerability, for instance, 86, and ecological footprint highly correlated to GDP. But it's, as you said, yeah, it's true, this idea of the tropics, the not so well-off countries, and this is why national biodiversity is non-significant once you add the GDP per capita. That's a good insight. Thank you.
Okay, more questions?
Overwhelming?
Oh, there's one at the back there.
Oh.
So why biodiversity then? I mean, again, water scarcity, because that's an immediate anthropocentric pressure on the people who are there. But are you saying that environmental concern literally generated because people are concerned about the loss of biodiversity? Because that's quite an exciting finding, I would say. Quite often the data seems to suggest that people care about the environment quite often because they are going to feel their own threats or pressures from it. So if they're just caring for nature because of intrinsic values, that's quite an exciting discovery.
Well, I have to say that my interpretation of this, an individual living in a country with scarce water, is just an interpretation. The data says that there is a positive correlation between scarcity of water and environmental concern. And as I have said, there were many variables. Now, I think that's an exciting result, because you always think in terms of damage, like ecological footprint, for instance. It was too correlated, but I had several other indicators dealing with environmental quality. They didn't work so well. And biodiversity is not that exciting, I think, because it's quite straightforward. You could say, yeah, richness in biodiversity terms in a country leads to environmental concern. But I think this makes sense, and this is not an idea you could think at the first time. This water scarcity factor. So I think that's, I don't know if I understood, if I answered.
Possibly not.
No. Okay. Could you rephrase it, please?
So my previous research has suggested that people care more about the environment if they're facing a particular environmental threat for one reason or another.
Yeah. So this is You're right. There's a difference between a closed environment and, let's say, more abstract problems, environmental problems. Yeah. We didn't have, the best thing for us to use would have been close and distant environmental problems. Theory runs that the more abstract and long and afar problems, like climate change, are related to post-materialistic kind of persons, and more materialistic approaches are related to, let's say, close, everyday environmental problems. We can't test that, and we don't have that data, and those data don't exist. But I will say anyway that actually in this moment, the long, far-off, abstract environmental problems, such as climate change in itself, is quite related, strongly correlated to local problems, and I think that people are aware of that as well. And sometimes when they see a flood, for instance, some people say this is because of the climate change. So this is a way to relate the concrete, particular, everyday environmental problems together with more abstract, distant environmental issues. Although it's true, I don't have data to test that. It would be great. It would be 100% great, but I use what I have. Now?
Thank you.
More questions? Oh, there's one from Murray, and another one from Cameron.
In your results, we saw that females more environmentally concerned than males. Older, more environmentally concerned than younger, which I would have maybe guessed might be the other way around. And then now you were controlling, you had your post-materialist values was also highly significant. What would post-materialist values, does that correlate through to anything culturally, religious? What's the story with post-materialist values?
Well, three things. So, should I tell why female are more prominent?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, there are several theories regarding that. This is because they are more intelligent. Yeah.
Partly because they're poorer, since richer people are less.
Well, there are several theories. One of them says that by nature, biologically, female are more prone to develop environmental concern because they can give birth. You can bear a child. And that's why some people say that you are closer to nature because you understand better the life and death cycle. Well, there's one big theory dealing with that. Another one could be that that is called the constructivist approach, saying that values change among societies, and the patriarchal values, this patriarchal system of society, they provide values of submission to women, and those values are not related to aggression, rather are related to nurture, to give food to people, and to look after people, and providing things, let's say, nurturing. And those values are more close to environmental concern. Those are the two major theories. Of course, there are several other interpretations. Regarding age, it's true that this is a bit misleading. I could have focused more on age. It wasn't actually the focus of my research, but most of the time, age and environmental concern is related in a non-linear way, saying that it's like mountain shape. So younger, and once you get older till 35 years old, you are very, very pro-environmental, but once you get that point, more or less, or 45 years old, you less more interest in environmental terms. But this is using Western industrialized countries' data. And we have here 50 countries all around the world. Actually, if I controlled, and I did, one of the models I have run, because I have run hundreds, one of them, I controlled age as I have controlled post-materialistic values in a random slope random model. And then you control the differences between how age behave among countries, and now you see something that is quite close to this previous idea that you were saying, that the oldest are not necessarily the most environmental concern. But it's not a so clear picture. This picture is 100% sure in the Western countries. The poorest countries is not so 100% sure. And about the last part that was that? Yeah. Well, I have used the 4-item scale. There is a knowledge scale made up by 16 factors, and this scale has been very largely contested. So actually, one thing is what Echavarren says it is dealing with, and the other thing is what actually this scale is measuring. Some people say that this scale is actually measuring dealing with democracy, for instance. The 4 items scale asks for, you have to choose between 4 statements, you have to choose 2. There are 2 statements that are supposed to be post-materialistic and 2 others supposed to be materialistic. The post-materialistic are something related with freedom of speech. The question is something like, which are the most important interests for your country that should be supported? Rise the freedom of speech, another is, well, the materialistic are fighting the rise of prices and inflation. So the materialistic values in these scales are quite strongly related to economy, let's say, and the others are related to liberty, to democracy, actually. So I use it, and actually post-materiality scale works, but we aren't quite sure of what are really post-materialistic values and if in that you really are accounting for that. That's a good question. Yeah, but my favorite hypothesis is the degradation one.
Okay, any more questions? Oh, Lisa, got one up there.
Would you feel confident in being able to use your model with some scenarios to try and see how environmental concern might change going into the future?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, but I will feel confident. Yeah, I have run, because if you see the models, you see that some factors change. It's true, from one model to another one. But the 4th and 5th model, which are the most important models here, I have run, I don't know how many, but at about 200 models. So those models are very robust. I mean, our subjective income, for instance, it's ruled out because many of those almost 200 models, they were almost significant, almost non-significant, just in the border. But for instance, water scarcity was always there at 99% of, and I have run many models, 6 months running models, and yeah, I'm confident. But you are dealing with a very interesting question: is that could I replicate this model in the future? Yes, I could, because those indexes are, I think the environmental performance index is done every year. So the only thing I should have to wait is for another world values survey that will take a long time in science, but not in social science terms. Something like in 5 years' time, I will be able to replicate these results. And I'm confident they're going to work in the same way. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Oh, last one at the back then, I think.
Why do you think the level of environmental concern drops off in the rich countries? Do you think it's due to the lack of more scarcity in things reducing the immediate problems?
Well, that's a good question. most of the time, I don't try to provide interpretations. Actually, this is one of the things that you real scientists blame social scientists, that we are too imaginative. But, yeah, I could say that Western countries, we live so far, in a way, so far from nature that probably we don't depend, our daily lives don't depend that much on it. And for us, I think, nature has become, for many people of us, nature has become like an abstract thing. I remember a friend of mine telling me that climate change was going to be great because so in the northern part of Spain we should have better summers, as you.
That's what our own environment minister said in the UK, so yeah. He's looking forward to growing olives. Yeah. So
but it's not unique. Yeah, but it's a way of thinking of nature in a very naive way, saying that nature it's only like distant forests, animals you don't really know, you don't see, and rain, for instance, percentage of rain per year. So if you understand nature in such terms, and many people do in these very urban societies, probably environmental concern is not one of your most favorite concerns. Could be an explanation. Probably you have a better one.
Okay, well, thank you ever so much, Jose. Thank you for a very stimulating talk, and we can continue this debate over a glass of wine and see what that does for our environmental concern levels. So thank you very much.
Thank you.